Welcome to the Trailblazer Talks podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Hope Jones. This podcast is designed to encourage and equip you to be a trailblazer right where you are, to help you discover your God-given purpose and bring you talks each week that will inspire you to do what you were made for. So let's get into this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Trailblazer Talks. I'm excited for this week because we are going to start a series on getting better at discipline, intentionality, and also self-control. Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit, in case you forgot. And this is something that I have been focused on for the last several years, but especially this year, I've really been honing in on the practice of better discipline and also just more intentionality. I feel like I have always been a fairly intentional person and disciplined person, but there are also areas of my life where I want to improve on that. And I feel like this is something that we can all improve on, actually, because I know that we all are constantly trying to read different self-help books and different things, trying to have better habits and trying to have better lifestyles and all these different things. But what I have realized is that it ultimately boils down to discipline and intentionality and also self-control. This week, I want to talk to you guys just kind of around the baseline of these different things, and then we can dig in a bit more as we go through this kind of 4-week series. And I did an Instagram post that really resonated with you guys earlier this year on discipline and intentionality. And kind of the basis of that post was, as we start the new year, often we are wanting to get new water bottles or start a new gym or start a new diet, or you name it. Whatever the thing is, we are constantly looking for something to aid us in these different habits that we hope to create and the life that we hope to create. And I think we spend so much money on things that actually kind of procrastinate the very thing that we're wanting to do. We're like, when I just get this Pilates program, or when I just get enough money to buy healthy groceries, or when I can afford a personal trainer, or when I can afford whatever, or when I just buy this new water bottle, then I'll drink more water. And we put the onus off on the thing that we are depending on to make us better, rather than taking the ownership to actually get better at that thing ourselves before investing in some expensive program or another water bottle or whatever it is. And it doesn't just boil down to fitness and health and diets and whatever. That's just kind of the easy topic, I feel, that we often kind of look to for our life goals. But there's so many areas of our life where discipline can be helpful. And I'm speaking to myself too. I am not perfect at this by any means. It's something that I am constantly working on. And I know that I'm not alone in this. And that's why I want to do this series with you guys and dig into this topic a little bit more, because I think it's something that we can work on together. And I also know that there are different things that have worked well for me and that haven't worked well for me, and things that I know that affect my discipline and my self-control and my intentionality more so than others. And so hopefully I can kind of serve just as like a mentor to you guys, and we can work on this together and become more disciplined together, because I think that the more disciplined that we can be, the better off our lives can be. And I know sometimes when people talk about discipline, it's like, my life is just going to be boring now because I'm just going to have such a regimented, life where everything's just perfectly in order and whatever. And that's not necessarily the case. I think by having disciplines in our life, we can have a more fun and flexible life. And by creating better disciplines, we can actually live life to the fullest, because we're not constantly saying yes to the right now and kind of shooting ourselves in the foot for the future. So let's dig into this. One of the things that I have found on this journey for discipline is that there are actually over 160 scriptures on the topic of discipline. So this is a very biblical topic. It's something that God cares a lot about, and I think that can ultimately help us. And there's a lot of different ways to create disciplines. And one of my favorite quotes that I quote often is from Levi Lusko, who's a pastor in Montana, and he has the quote that says, "Now yells louder, but later lasts longer." And I love this quote because it's applicable to so many areas of our lives, but it boils down to the intentionality and discipline. And this quote came from his book called Swipe Right, where originally he was talking about dating and choices we make while dating, but I believe that it applies to kind of all the areas of our life, because the choices that we make today affect our tomorrow and affect our future self. And if we are choosing different things today, that can impact how things turn out later in life. And if we are working out today, that impacts how well we are as we grow older. Whenever my mom has always told me muscle has memory, and if we work on having muscle now and we work on working out now, it's going to be more beneficial as we age and as we get older. If we make healthy food choices now, not to say that we can't enjoy food and not to say that we can't enjoy sweet treats and things like that, but if we make healthier choices now and take care of our body now, then it'll help us as we grow older and help our future self. And our future self will thank us for building strong foundations now. That's something I'm working on as well, is one, having better like health rhythms and things like that, and also having better disciplines with just all areas of my life with time management. Because if I have better time management now, that will help me during busier seasons of my life when I don't even have to think twice about the rhythms that I'm doing. It just comes naturally. Or, if I'm sick or if there's a hard season, then if I already have good rhythms in place and good disciplines in place, then I don't really have to think about it. Things just kind of naturally fall into place later on. And that's something that has really been beneficial to me, is thinking of it in that way instead of thinking like I've got to implement all these things right now at the same time. And I think when we try to do too much at once, it almost like impedes our progress, because we get overwhelmed and then we give up and then we just revert right back to like where we were before. And the reason that I've been so focused on creating more disciplines and intentionality in my life is I feel like, and maybe you guys feel the same, but I feel like ever since the pandemic, I have just kind of reverted to whatever's comfortable, because I feel like when the pandemic happened, obviously things were very unsure. We were not certain of like when all the lockdowns and stuff were going to end, whatever, and the world was just very hard, and it still is hard. But I feel like in those moments when the world is hard, we just revert to whatever's comfortable, which there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but at the same time, I feel like that creates unhealthy habits where we just want to be comforted and soothed and whatever. So we just kind of do whatever in our life. And I found that to be true in my own life, where I had gotten in before the pandemic. I was getting really good with my workouts, with eating healthy. I was in the best shape of my life. And I also was getting really good at limiting my screen time and working towards goals and stuff like that. And then the pandemic happened, and I feel like I obviously was on my phone a lot more, and I just kind of ate whatever because it was just, comforting just to have comfort foods and things like that. And I gained more weight than I intended to through the pandemic over the past several years. And I realized I never really picked back up those healthy habits that I had had pre-pandemic. And I've been working towards getting back to that. And I realized I kept reading all these different books and different things to help me. And I realized it all boiled down to disciplines. And when things get hard, I feel like disciplines tend to go out the window. And I realized, I'm like, okay, what typically causes me to falter on these different habits and rhythms and things that I like to do to have a healthier life? And typically the things that impede that is when life gets hard, or whenever I get sick and I kind of get off track with things, or I get like a workout injury type of thing, or I'm just like too sore after a workout, or something hard happens in life, whether it's grief, whether it's busyness, whatever. Those are the typical things that I have found that tend to get me off track. And if I don't have strong enough foundations and disciplines in life during those hard times, then it's really hard to pick back up whenever, I'm now well, like I've been sick and now I'm well, or life is better again, or whatever the thing is that was impeding that discipline. I found that those are typically like when things get off track. So I want to talk through a few ways that can kind of help us with creating and developing more discipline, and we can dig into this more as we kind of go through this series. But these are just 3 ways that I have found that help me with developing more discipline. And again, this is not an overnight thing. Like, we don't just automatically say like, yep, I'm going to implement these 3 things and I'm going to have more discipline, and that's that. Like, we call them daily disciplines for a reason, because it is a daily thing that we have to do. But I think by creating these daily disciplines and having rhythms and things like that, we can start to create a better life for ourselves. So let's dig into these 3 ways that we can develop more discipline. The first way is to lead by choice and not by feelings. So often we let feelings lead the way. Whenever we want to work out, we're like, I just don't feel like it, or it's too dark outside, or it's this, or it's that. I don't know, I'm just not in the mood for it. And we are a very feelings-led society, and we allow our feelings to basically rule our lives currently as a society. Everything's about, how do you feel? What does this make you feel? And if your feelings don't align with whatever it is that you want to do, you're not going to do it. And so the thing is, like, our feelings often can lie to us. And it's not to say that feelings are bad. Our feelings are definitely valid, but our feelings are finicky and they're not always the best guide for our life. Often our feelings can lead us astray, and they're definitely allowed to be in the car with us, but they should never be the driver of our life, because often our feelings will lead us in all different directions. Because if you think about your feelings, you feel so many different things a day. There's going to be days where you don't feel like doing something. There's going to be days where you're sad, or where you're happy, or where you're ecstatic, or whatever. Like, your feelings do like a crazy number on yourself. But if we can instead lead by choices, we can begin to acknowledge how we feel, but we can create better disciplines when we allow our choices to lead us. Because I like how one of my former pastors, when I lived in Birmingham, said this about love. We don't fall in love, because then we can easily fall out of love. We choose to love. And when love becomes a choice, then we don't fall in and out of love. And so that's the same with anything we feel in life. If we feel tired, we can choose to work out anyways. And there's definitely nuances to this. Like, if you are sick, or if you definitely need rest because you have been pushing yourself too hard, then you can choose to rest because you know you're tired because of whatever the reason is. But if you're just tired because you've been lazy, and because you have been, eating cruddy and all these different things, then maybe you need to choose to eat healthier and choose to work out, instead of allowing those feelings of like, oh, I just don't feel like it, get in your way. And I think when we begin to acknowledge where those different feelings are coming from, then we can make better judgment calls with the choices of whether we override that feeling and do the thing anyways, or whether we listen to that feeling and choose to rest. Because I am definitely against hustle culture. Like, I remember, I think, when was that a trend? Was it like 2016 to 2018? Hustle culture was such a big trend. And I remember reading different books and kind of giving into hustle culture of like, oh, I've got to wake up at 5 a.m. and I got to do all this stuff and I got to accomplish. But that also like left so many of us burnt out. So I think we have to find the balance of acknowledging our feelings, understanding where our feelings are coming from and what we're feeling, and then making choices based upon the origins of those different feelings. And the second thing that I think we have to do to create better disciplines, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, but we need to create more rhythms rather than routines, because rhythms, if you think about what a rhythm is, it allows you to have ebb and flow with your life rather than a routine where it's very regimented of, okay, I've got to wake up at this time, and then at this time I do this, and then at this time I do that, and then after that I do this, and then after that I do this. And then that doesn't allow room for if your kid wakes up sick, or if you wake up sick, or if something happens that messes up the timing of your routine. It doesn't really leave a lot of room for flexibility. But if you instead have a rhythm of, okay, in the mornings I typically like to do these, 5 things or whatever it is. I like to wake up and have my coffee and read my Bible and make breakfast for my family and check the news or whatever it is. If you just have kind of the general things you like to do, or if you like to work out in the mornings, whatever, then if something disrupts that, you can reorient your day to find time to re-implement that rhythm somewhere else, rather than a routine that doesn't really account for life's changes. Because if you think about what a routine is, it's very regimented and it's very time oriented. Like at 9 p.m. I'm going to do my face nighttime routine, and then by 9:30 I'm going to be in bed, and then by 10 I'm going to do this. And it kind of can mess you up, because I know for me, I used to try to implement different routines, and I would keep them for maybe a week, and then I would falter because something would happen. There would be some TV show on, or some sports thing or whatever that was later than my normal schedule, and I stayed up to watch it, and then I didn't do my nighttime routine or whatever it is. And instead, if you have more of a rhythm, you can kind of work around that, where maybe if there's a show or something on late that's special that you want to watch, maybe you do your nighttime rhythm before the show, so that way you can just watch the show and enjoy it, and then you maybe go to bed a little later that night or whatever. And so I think by establishing more rhythms, it allows for that flexibility so that you can ebb and flow with the different varieties that happen in life, whether it is getting sick, or whether your kid is sick, or there's a program that night or a meeting or whatever. I think that allows more flexibility where you can have longer term rhythms rather than regimented routines that falter the minute something changes in your life. And then the third thing is something that I have talked about a lot on this show, is intentionality. When we can work on being more intentional and we create discipline as a byproduct, and when we make that effort to intentionally call someone, or intentionally eat healthy, or intentionally mail a card to someone, or all those different types of things, over time that is creating different disciplines that can sustain it. And intentionality and discipline go hand in hand, and so does self-control. That's right in there with it. But intentionality just means that we take time to think about something and act on it. It means we focus on more than ourselves. It means that we are disrupting our selfish patterns to be more thoughtful in our lives. And if you want to reach the goals you have this year, and you want to focus on creating more discipline, then start with intentionality. Because I know for myself, whenever I am overly focused on me, then I tend to lose out on that intentionality. I tend to lose out on those disciplines. But when I can be intentional in how I speak to others, or how I help others, or things like that, and have more of an outward focus, then I tend to do better with the disciplines in my life. And I think in general, as a society, we could all use more intentionality, because we are such a self-centered, self-focused, I'm the main character, it's all about me, you do you, but I'm going to do me society. And we have lost so much of our intentionality because we are all out for ourselves, it seems. And I think whenever we can work on intentionality and discipline and self-control, we can be better humans, and we can be better people that love others better, and we can be better at serving others well, and we as a whole can just be a better society. So I think if we work on nothing else this year, let's work on discipline and intentionality and focus on how we can be better people in that regard. And in turn, I think that'll allow us to love others well. And there's a couple verses that I wanted to chat about because the Bible does talk so much about discipline. And in Hebrews 12:11, it says, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." And I love that verse because it basically says that like discipline yields peace. And I know all of us could use more peace in our lives. And there are so many other verses in here, like 1 Corinthians 9:27 says, "But I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified." And there's even more verses. Proverbs 3 talks about not despising the Lord's discipline because he disciplines those that he loves, just like a father disciplines their child. And there's so many scriptures. Obviously, I mentioned at the very beginning, there's over 160 scriptures that speak about discipline. And there's also a lot of scriptures that speak about self-control. And so I would encourage you this week to take time to dig into what does the Bible say about discipline? What does the Bible say about self-control? And use that as your guide to study this for yourself. That is one of my biggest things is I always want you guys to study things for yourself. I never want you just to take my word for it, because even though I am a Bible teacher, even though I feel called to speak and write on these different things, like I am by no means ever the only expert on this. And I am learning right alongside you. I am human too. And so I think it's beneficial that we learn together. I think it's beneficial that you study these things for yourself and dig in for yourself so that you know what the Bible says about these different topics, and so that you can hear the Holy Spirit speaking to you specifically. But I want to, over the next couple of episodes, dig in a bit more about discipline and dig in a bit more about some of these different topics, because there's so much that we can learn about this that can help our lives be better in 2025, and we can begin to lead healthier lives and feel more like ourselves. I know for me that not having the disciplines in place in my life that I used to have and not having some of these things, the biggest thing for me that I was like, I need to make some changes is like, I'm always tired. I don't have consistent bedtimes and things like that. I wake up tired, and I feel like I let time get away from me whenever I have all these different things I want to do. I feel like so often I let time get away from me, and then I realize too in busy seasons that I forget to reach out to people or whatever, and I just end up kind of becoming not a full hermit, but it's like I just get in my little cocoon in my little world and I lose out on that intentionality. And I also realized too, like the endless scrolling and things like that is not healthy. And whenever I scroll more on social media, I compare more, and like the different lies start to resurface again, and things that I've already overcome start to like come back to the surface. So this is something that I need to, that I'm also working on with creating more disciplines, better rhythms, intentionality, and self-control, so that I can be the best version of myself. So I hope that this can be helpful to you guys, and this is something we can do together. And as we dig more into this topic, I think that we will leave better than we came. And I think that we will be able to really see the benefit of this and have kind of long-term success versus just these quick wins whenever we have some of these other self-help habits. And we're just like, oh, we're just going to do this and this and this, but then it doesn't last. And so hopefully this can be something lasting for us that we can implement for the rest of our lives. But that's all I have for this week. We'll see you guys next week. And again, if you like this episode, if you like listening to the show, it's always so helpful if you can leave ratings and reviews for the show on whatever platform you listen on. And if you are watching this on YouTube, if you can like and subscribe to my channel and share this with people. It's always so helpful when you guys share these episodes because it helps more people to find the show and for the show to continue growing and for me to be able to do this long term. And I always appreciate all of your support. And again, if you ever have any questions or feedback for the show, you can email me at hello@thetrailblazerjournals.com. But that's all I have for this week. I will see you guys in the next one.